Later.
I will be with you shortly, sir.
You got it. Hey, nice to meet you. I'm Deeds.
I'm Ruben, sir.
This is a wicked nice elevator.
Keep an eye on him, Emilio, or it's your ass.
It's nice to see you too, sir.
So how's the elevator business treating you, Ruben?
Oh, it has its ups and downs.
All right. That was good. Jeez, I'm crow. How'd you get down here so fast?
Sneaky, sir. Right this way.
Hey everyone, Isaac Shutt here, your favorite wills and trust lawyer. And you know, I watched this video as a teenager and I thought it was funny. And as a grown-up adult, I still think it's funny. And by the way, being a wills and trust lawyer, it has its ups and downs too. You know, one of the neat things about this area of law is that it impacts everybody. Even if you live to be 150 years old, you're still gonna need a will or a trust, or the government's gonna have one for you. In fact, that's really what Mr. Deeds is all about. Here, check out a few clips, you'll see what I mean.
Deeds, read a card already. I gotta get back on duty.
Okay, I better get up there. Good meeting you, gentlemen.
Mr. Deeds, does the name Preston Blake mean anything to you?
Well, Mom's maiden name was Blake.
I only got one for you guys this week, but I got a feeling it's gonna end my losing streak with Hallmark.
Deeds, Preston Blake was your mother's uncle.
You kidding me? I got an uncle? That's awesome. How's he doing?
He's dead.
Oh, no. Well, if there's anything I can do.
Deeds!
Okay, I'll be right with you guys.
When Mr. Blake died, he left an enormous fortune. $40 billion. He left it all to you, Deeds.
Wait a minute. What are you talking about? You gotta get back on duty. You're not a cop.
Yeah, you're right. I got this down the costume shop. But it can't hurt to pretend.
What a Weisenheimer.
So even silly movies like Mr. Deeds can teach you lessons about estate planning. Here's the first legal lesson. If you don't have a will, don't worry, the government has one for you. And if you don't want the politicians and, I don't know, elected officials to decide where your hard-earned assets go when you die, you probably need a will or a trust. And so in the legal lingo, dying without a will is called dying intestate. And so these laws that our politicians come up with, it's called dying with intestate succession. And the people who would inherit from you are called heirs. So if you have a will or a trust, the people that you say get everything are called beneficiaries. But if you die without a will or a trust, those are your heirs. So you don't get a say in where things go if you don't have a will or a trust. It's going to go where the government says it goes. And so if you don't like the government's will for you, or if you don't even know what it says, or if you've never even met who your heirs might be, like Deeds here, maybe you ought to have a will or a trust. And then also, if you want to hear a little trade secret, we call people like Deeds laughing heirs. And so these are heirs, people who would inherit in the absence of a will, but we call them laughing heirs because they're so remote. They're like such distant relatives that you never even met them before. So here in this scene, and this happens in the real world, by the way, Deeds finds out that this rich great uncle died, and most people's reaction to that is great. How much am I getting? Deeds is a little bit more, good-spirited and kind-hearted than most red-blooded humans. Most people, if you find out that you're inheriting from somebody you've never even met before, you're not really sad because you didn't even know the person. You're more like, great, this is kind of like winning the lotto. And so here, I would think of Deeds as a laughing heir. Let's check out the next clip.
Okay, everybody, it's showtime. I call this 50th anniversary card, which is quite a feat nowadays. 50 years have passed by with laughter and tears. Do you remember when we went to the zoo and that time we drank all the beers? Beers, oh yeah. I promise to love you for 50 years more, even when your bosoms sag down to the floor.
That clip really has some relevance to what we do in my legal field because Deeds here is going to be inheriting quite a bit of money from his rich great uncle, but Deeds works at a pizza shop and is trying to get Hallmark cards. He's not even been successful, but he's trying to write silly Hallmark cards. And so if you're thinking about giving away a lot of assets, you probably need to give some thought to, is this person who might be inheriting from me capable of getting a large sum, or would they just blow it on some harebrained scheme? Like, I'll give you an example. I had this guy whose great aunt died, and this guy was a laughing heir. He wasn't expecting a large inheritance, but here he goes. He gets this large inheritance. And I asked this kid, I say kid, I think he was 19 or 20 years old, what was he going to do with this money that he was inheriting? And it was quite a lot. And he said, don't worry about it. I got it all figured out. I'm really into cars. And so I'm going to buy a bunch of used cars and have a used car lot. And I'm going to make a bunch of money doing that. And I thought to myself, this guy has no experience with cars. He really has no business experience to speak of. I mean, he's foregoing college to go be a used car salesman with zero experience in business. And I actually followed up with him sometime later, and just like I had feared, he'd actually run through all of his inheritance. So despite my recommendation that he, talk to somebody that can give him some financial advice and things like that, he decided in his great 19-year-old or 20-year-old wisdom that he had it all figured out and he was going to have this used car lot and make millions, and he blew his entire inheritance. So, before you give money to somebody like Deeds here, who's staking their future on getting Hallmark cards published, you might think about, is this a guy that really has a lot of business handling business? So let's check out the next clip.
For a very rich man.
Ladies, top one's yours.
Oh, thank you, Deeds.
Of course.
Yummy, yummy.
So, Deeds, what's new?
I found out I have an uncle, but he died.
Oh, that's too bad.
He gave me $40 billion, though.
Well, that's nice.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you go and spend it all on some fancy record player.
I won't.
Who are your friends, Deeds?
Oh, I'm sorry. Chuck, Cecil, this is Jane, Kitty, and Sue.
Pleasure to meet you, Cecil.
Pleasure's all mine, Kitty. Or should I just say, meow?
So there's some truth to this scene. I mean, in this scene, Deeds gets some advice from these well-meaning ladies about, what he ought to do with his money. Again, that's totally true to form. In my practice area, we call these well-meaning friends and families little birds. They talk into your ear about how you ought to spend your money, but they're not professionals. And usually these little birds talking into your ears, they don't have any business experience or financial or legal experience. They're just telling you how you can blow your money more effectively. So if you're going to inherit, instead of listening to the little birds in your life, maybe go talk to a lawyer, a CPA, a tax guy, something like that. Although I will say, it was good advice to not blow all $40 billion on a record player. You might think that this rich uncle is crazy for not having a will or a trust, like, oh, that's totally unbelievable. No, it is totally believable, because guess what? More than half of Americans will die without even a basic will, and even less will have a trust. And so when I do videos about celebrities and other high net worth individuals, I've stopped getting surprised at how many people die without wills or trusts. So really, I don't think it's actually that unbelievable that this rich great uncle died without a will or a trust, because again, more than half of us will die without a good estate plan. So you should be in the good part of Americans and get your will or trust done. All right, let's check out the next clip.
We need you to come back to New York with us, just for a few days.
We're drawing up some papers that you'll need to sign.
What kind of papers?
You see, technically, you've inherited 300 million shares of Blake Media, Inc. Now, Chuck and I, along with some of the partners, are going to buy that stock for $40 billion, which, of course, we've had to borrow from various
who cares about all the financial mumbo-jumbo? We just need a little bit of time to dot the T's and cross the I's. And while we're doing that, we need you to stay away from the press.
Well, the media frenzy will die down in a couple of weeks, but until then...
Oh, you don't want reporters crawling all over this lovely little town, do you?
Oh, no.
Okay, so I don't know who these guys are. I don't know if they're attorneys or what they are. But if you're going to inherit a lot of money and somebody asks you to sign something, don't. I mean, this is not legal advice, but I will give you some legal advice, and that is go get legal advice. I mean, if you're inheriting a lot of money and somebody's asking you to sign something, especially legal papers, before you sign anything, I'm almost always going to recommend that you go talk to an attorney and maybe a CPA or financial advisor, because you need to know what you're signing. I mean, let's be honest. As an attorney, I think anytime a client of mine is being asked to sign a document, my client is giving up something. So before you sign a document, you need to know, what am I giving up by signing this piece of paper? And if that's something I'm not comfortable with, whatever right it is or whatever it is I'm agreeing to, if I'm not comfortable with that, then don't sign it. But before you know that, you need to know what it is you're signing and the impact of signing it. So go see a lawyer so you don't make a big mistake.
Give us a card! On my way to the big city for a business trip. Never ever left Mandrake Falls before. Ain't that a pip? But while I'm gone, I know I'll miss you all a lot. So bring your rich butt back here and buy us all a shot! You got it, pal.
Okay, and while we're talking about advice, here's some advice that I'm really comfortable making. If you're gonna inherit a bunch of money from a rich great uncle or something like that, don't tell your entire town, because just like these folks, they're all gonna try to get something from you. So if you're gonna inherit a lot of money, just lay low, be quiet, don't tell your entire town, don't broadcast it, because people are gonna come out of the woodwork and they're gonna guilt you if you don't share what is legally yours. So just don't put yourself in that situation, just lay low.
Too bad for you. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a good reporter.
Miss Bennett, I wasn't aware that you were a stockholder.
There's a couple things you're not aware of. Like how to tweeze your eyebrows, for instance. Also, when Deeds gave away his fortune, he gave away something that wasn't his.
What are you talking about?
I have here the diary of Preston Blake. I would like to read a passage from Mr. Blake's diary, dated April 12th, 1957. I am a volcano of lust. I've gotten
this far in business by following my heart, and I must follow it now in love. If she just gives me a sign, an opening.
Want me to wipe the leaves on your ficus tree, Mr. Blake?
You can call me Preston.
Want me to wipe the leaves on your ficus tree, Preston?
Yes. Yes. Yes!
Who was this mystery woman? I have here the Blake Media Ledger sign-in book from April 1957. On the night of the 12th, there was only one woman working on Preston Blake's floor. Sadly, 9 months later, she died giving birth to a son born January 23rd, 1958.
That is my birthday.
To a Miss Consuela Lopez.
That is my mother.
And the rightful heir to $40 billion.
That is my money?
A simple DNA test will show that Emilio Lopez is the majority stockholder to Blake Media.
That isn't my money!
That's no money!
That isn't my money!
Where'd it go?
I actually love this scene. I mean, yeah, it's a really silly scene where she comes forward and has this big revelation. But in the real world, there is a tinge of truth to this. Although in the real world, this kind of revelation about potential heirs is a lot more boring. So I'm sure the writers of this movie didn't want the boring truth, which would be a sort of court scene. Usually this sort of thing where we find out who the heirs of an estate are, that's typically done in a small courtroom, and it's called the probate court. And this wouldn't be revealed by some investigative reporter in front of hundreds of people. It would typically be done by a court-appointed attorney. In most of these cases, when the person dies without a will, there's going to be a neutral court-appointed person. Here in Texas, we call them an attorney ad litem. And that attorney ad litem will be tasked by the judge with doing an investigation, with talking to other relatives of the deceased person, of doing investigation using online tools to find out if this deceased person might have had more heirs. So in the Deeds case, instead of this investigative reporter having this big revelation, this probably would have been a quiet revelation by an attorney ad litem. This wouldn't just all sort of happen automatically or whatever like that happens in this scene. So the ideas are there and it's silly, but in the real world, it's not quite like that. It's actually quite a bit more boring and a lot more legal. And I think the lesson there is, if you think you might be a potential heir, you probably want to get a lawyer so that you can get your foot in the door in court, because if the judge doesn't find out about you, somebody else may end up with your inheritance. All right, let's check out the next clip.
Emilio! I will do good things for everyone. Free flamingo lessons for all.
People, please.
That is my money.
Don't be misled. These are all lies.
Well, here's a note about this thing about the DNA testing. Again, there could be a tinge of truth to that. I mean, the record book and the little journal that he had, that's probably not enough evidence for a judge to determine that this other guy is a true biological child. It would take the judge a lot of speculation to come to the conclusion that this $40 billion estate goes to this guy. So it would take a lot of sort of inferences and leaps of faith, which again, we call speculation, and the judge is not allowed to do that. So what would happen in the real world is the judge might say, look, if this guy thinks he's got a valid claim, then somebody will file a motion for the DNA testing to happen. And then what will happen is the judge will take DNA samples from other known relatives of the deceased and then look for a certain percentage match of the DNA with this alleged heir. And so if there's that percentage match on their DNA or more, then the judge will treat that as conclusive evidence that he is, in fact, the biological child of the deceased guy. And that happens in the real world. I've had cases like that, especially when it's with men. I mean, women usually kind of know who their children are, but with men, there could be kids out there. And so DNA testing becomes really relevant. And so there is a tinge of truth to that. I think that's what would be needed in the courtroom.
Mr. Cedar, you are fired.
You can't fire me! I'm in control! Get your hands off me! I'm Chuck Steer!
You? Oh, you, sir, you are definitely fired.
I'd like to stay. I think I can really do some good if I just got another chance.
Not fired. But tomorrow morning, you let me change your socks.
Okay.
Something else that would be needed in the courtroom is this guy would need to be court appointed as the executor or administrator of the estate. I mean, this is kind of insane. This guy whisks up to the podium and starts bossing people around and firing people in this company that he believes he's inheriting. Yeah, so I mean, in the real world, you don't do that. You don't have any legal authority until the judge officially appoints you as the executor or administrator of the deceased person's estate. Until you're sworn in as the executor or the administrator, you're not in charge of the estate's assets. So it's important that you go get that legal control in the correct way.
And you, long fellow, you are the one who made all this possible with your beautiful words and your beautiful spirit, and Miss Bennett with her beautiful research. How can I thank you?
All I want is your friendship, Emilio. You're a good man. I'll miss you.
Deeds. How about $1 billion?
All right.
Done.
Yeah, and here's another thing. This guy's already giving away like $1 billion, and he's just found out like 30 seconds before that he may be inheriting a lot of this money. you know, again, there is a tinge of truth to this. Sometimes people, before they've even gotten the court paperwork that shows that they are officially the heir of an estate, they're already telling me how they're planning on blowing that inheritance. They're telling me who they're going to give it away or how they're going to invest it in things like used car lots. So, I mean, this is kind of true to the real world where this guy's given away a big chunk of his inheritance before he's gotten it. So this happens in the real world, but don't let it happen to you. Make sure that you've actually got the money in the bank, or you know, you've got the title or deed or whatever paperwork to make sure that that stuff is really and truly yours before you start making plans for it. I told you earlier that this is a dumb movie that can actually make you smarter. And so let's kind of run down and summarize all the lessons Mr. Deeds teaches us. Number one, if you don't have a will, the politicians have made one for you, and that's called your heirs. So if you don't have a will, it's going to go to your heirs, and there's some law drafted up by politicians that will say who's going to get all of your hard-earned assets. Now, none of that matters if you have a will or a trust, so go get one. Number two, most Americans die without a valid will. And I know that seems crazy, but honestly, I don't think people should be embarrassed about it or things like that because it's so common. So I just want you to be in the good half of Americans, or slightly less than half of Americans that have a last will and testament. Go see a lawyer, deal with it seriously, be an adult, and get your will or trust done. Number three, heirs are the people who inherit if you don't have a will, and laughing heirs are really remote heirs who would be inheriting from you, and these are people that you may not have even met. So if you don't want your stuff to go to laughing heirs, I mean, maybe you want it to go to a charity if you don't have close relatives. Again, get a will or a trust. Now, if you're going to inherit, you should probably talk with a lawyer, a CPA, or a financial advisor before you go shooting your mouth off to the entire town. And also, those lawyers and CPAs and tax advisors can keep you out of a lot of trouble because you're going to have a lot of taxes to consider, whether that's property taxes, inheritance, estate tax. So there are a lot of things that you wouldn't have thought of that you need to look at that a CPA or lawyer does like every day and can tell you, hey, don't make a silly mistake here. Here's a simple thing that you need to do. And then a financial advisor can keep you from blowing it all like a lot of these lottery winners. And by the way, again, this is super common. I've dealt with a lot of people who are inheriting these large estates who, kind of like lottery winners, find themselves bankrupt in a short period of time because they didn't get the right advice and they started giving it all away or blowing it because they're not used to dealing with large sums. So if you haven't had large sums before, be careful. Go talk to professionals with good ratings and good reviews and a good reputation so that you don't end up like a lot of these lotto winners that are bankrupt. Anyway, I hope you found this video helpful. I love this movie. I think it's ridiculous and insane and stupid and silly, but I got smarter by watching this video, and I hope you did too.